It's raining and I'm car rotting. So let's get this hierarchy thing wrapped up, eh? For those of you who don't know, I'm Miriam. I'm doing a series on internalized fundamental values of whiteness and helping white people, specifically white women, unpack them and kind of unpack our trauma related to them. So we've been talking about hierarchy. White people in the US are taught to value and deeply value social hierarchy and to organize and identify around specific kind of social hierarchy. And it's colonialist, it's dehumanizing, it's very rootless. And we've talked about all of that. The other thing that it is it is unstable. I was going to say insecure. Yes, but it's unstable. And what I mean by that is not that it's fragile, because it's clearly not. This is a very, the system is very self-perpetuating. It's very difficult to break out of. But it's also fundamentally, we talked about rootlessness, it's fundamentally not a good place to plant your feet. For a couple of reasons. One of them is that it's situational. So, as we've discussed, the way the hierarchy works is that you're trying to get as close to an ideal as possible, and the people who are furthest away from the ideal get all of the deferred anger and disgust and blame, and the people your level or above are the ones who deserve empathy and compassion and humanity. But what happens if there's somebody below you and then they leave and you become the lowest person in the situation? It's very, very similar to the scapegoat dynamic in certain unhealthy families. I've seen this play out in families I know. You have one person who's just constantly criticized, who's treated aggressively, excluded, birthday presents from the gas station kind of shit, right? But when that person is removed from the family dynamic, all of a sudden, all of that aggression and blame and dismissal starts to fall on the next person in line, right? And whiteness hierarchies work like that too, because remember, as it is in the large scale, so it is in the small scale. And so if you're in a whiteness hierarchy and you're at the bottom, like, you want somebody below you because the more people who are below you on the hierarchy that you're on, whatever that be, the better off you are, right? And so it's very much like a self-perpetuating system of bullying, really. I did a stint in, I think, 5th or 6th grade. I did a brief stint as a bully. And because I was being bullied, and I didn't really recognize it so much as bullying because I'm autistic, but I was being excluded and teased. And then I started to join other people who were bullying this other kid. And I kind of I didn't participate too much, but I was there. I was joining in. And for a while, that felt nice because I wasn't the target. But I ultimately was like, this isn't getting me anything I want. So, partly because I wasn't autistic enough to take advantage. I was too autistic to take advantage of it, I think, and actually find a social circle around that. So I was just like, I'm not getting anything out of this and I don't like it. So I stopped. But there is that dynamic, right? There's that dynamic of if you can find a target for the people above you that's not you, then you are safer. So there's very much that dynamic in the hierarchy that we're taught to value. And it's also really unstable in kind of the way a rope bridge is unstable. And because at one end of it, culturally, nationwide, at one end of the bridge is white landowning men who built the system. And at the other end is indigenous and black women. And everyone else is just kind of fighting it out in the middle and trying to get as close to stability as possible. But I don't know if you've ever been on a rope bridge, but the further out you go, the more swingy and like scary it gets, right? And this is not to say that people who were at the bottom of the US hierarchy in any way, poor people, marginalized people, are having a less hard time on the hierarchy, because it is incredibly stressful and incredibly damaging and incredibly toxic to be like the receptacle of all of that blame and hate. It's very difficult to be poor in the US. It's very difficult to be disabled in the US. It's very difficult to be at the bottom of this hierarchy. It's very stressful. But at the same time, there's a different kind of stress that comes when you're in the middle, because you're a lot of people live in this zone where they're one big life event from getting knocked down to the bottom and one big life event away from gaining more stability near the top. And so you kind of live in this flux where you're trying to get stability, but you're also trying not to get knocked down. And a lot of that depends on who's around you and where they are on the ladder. And so it leads to a lot of competition. And I'm trying to decide if competition is like a specific value we're taught or like a byproduct of this unstable hierarchy. So maybe by the time I get past the values I already have in my brain, we'll have figured that out and we can talk about it. But it does lead to a lot of competition, because people are trying to feel safe, people are trying to feel secure, people are trying to feel good about themselves and feel like they're okay in the world. And everyone's on this like wobbly ass rope bridge, trying to get as close to like the good stable end as possible, and also trying to get ahead of everyone else so that like there are people below you to take the brunt, right? I don't know if this is making any sense. I'm kind of talking out loud, but thinking out loud. But that's the thing, is this hierarchy it's unstable, it's situational, and it really leads to like a lot of cognitive dissonance, because there isn't a place to put your feet. There isn't a strong moral stance. And if you have a strong moral stance, a lot of times you've got that strong moral stance, like with religion, you've got that strong moral stance from the hierarchy you're in, and they're the ones that tell you what's good and what's bad. But if you just have the hierarchy, it can be really difficult to figure out like a moral stance, because everything's really shaky. And I think that's what leads to a lot of white passivity in the United States. We talked about this in the hierarchy and empathy video, where the nature of the hierarchy invites passivity, because you're giving all of the benefit of the doubt and the sympathy to the people above you and all of your anger to the people below you. So you don't have a motivation to help the people below you, and you don't have a motivation to unseat the people above you. But also this instability, I think, also invites passivity, because like you don't want to rock the boat and lose what little stability you have. So those are just some thoughts on kind of the last little bit of the hierarchy. The last thing that these hierarchies is based in conformity. And that's actually a pretty big thing, but that we're going to talk about when we talk about conformity in the next few videos. So these hierarchies are based in conforming to the ideal at the top of the hierarchy. That's how they're structured. So we're going to start talking about conformity next. It's late, my eyes are tired, but I wanted to give you, before we move on to conformity, I wanted to give you a simple step to start helping you unpack the toxic hierarchies that we've been talking about. And that is, repeat to yourself, every child deserves to eat. That's it. That's the lowest starting point I can give you. Every child deserves to eat. And once you've internalized that, you can scale it up. Every person deserves to eat. And then you can start with something else. Every child deserves a safe place to sleep. Every child deserves to be treated like a person. Okay? No matter what their parents have done or didn't do, no matter who their parents are, every child deserves to eat. Okay, start there. Whatever you're feeling in resistance to that statement, sit with it, think about it, examine it. Ask yourself why, and start unpacking. And then as you go, you can expand it. Everyone deserves to eat. Everyone deserves access to a safe place to sleep. Everyone deserves to be treated like a person. Okay? Because the thing is, the fundamental characteristic of this hierarchy that we as white people in the United States are stuck in is that it tells us that some people deserve things and some people do not deserve things. And the trap is that whatever you think the people below you don't deserve, there's somebody higher than you that thinks you don't deserve it either. So if it's everybody or it's nobody. And you can see that in the election, right? People thought, oh, the people below me don't deserve, to be safe as immigrants in the United States. But guess what? There was somebody above them that doesn't think they deserve to be safe as immigrants in the United States either. Okay? There's somebody above you on your hierarchy that doesn't think you deserve to eat. And the only way to keep yourself fully safe from those people is to stand your ground and say, there are some things that everyone deserves. And if it's hard to do that, just start with kids. Every child deserves to eat, no matter what the parent situation. Oh my God. Did the cat hiss at you? Did the cat come for pets and then realize you were sitting there and hiss at you? Someone had their shots today. They're very tired. Did old grumpy bastard cat hiss at you? It's okay. No, puppers. You're all right. Anyway, the animals are having a beef. They're having their own hierarchy issues right now. All right. It's late. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Okay, so it's going to be quick because I got to take my kid's backpack back to school because we walked out of the house without it. A+ us. But people have been asking me, I've gotten a handful of comments. How did you learn this? What books do you recommend? How did you become self-aware? That I wanted to address real fast. The first one is books. I don't know. I have to go back and kind of try to remember. There aren't many. I was in a reading slump for most of this journey. So it wasn't like I read a bunch of books on race and justice and came up with all of this. I didn't. But there were some, and I'm going to try and remember what those were and maybe make a post about it. How did you become self-aware? I am an adult diagnosed autistic. So I have spent the majority of my life analyzing and filtering everything I do so that nobody gets mad at me. And that is not healthy, and I'm working on it. But it does lend itself to a certain degree of self-awareness. I'm also I have alexithymia, which means that I don't recognize emotions. I had to learn to recognize emotions by how they feel in my body, which also means that I intellectualize my internal processes a lot, which is also has its not great side, but that's just how my brain is. The question, how did you learn all this? I don't think a lot of you are going to be satisfied with my answer. I shut up. I spent over a decade watching and listening and paying attention and shutting up. And if you want to go back and look at my who I am video, you can I explain how I got here in terms of the events and stuff that led me here. But throughout all of that stuff that was happening, now I'm not trying to toot my own horn here. I had a couple of advantages. Number one being that again, adult diagnosed autistic, so I was undiagnosed at the time. And I I didn't know, if I don't know how to navigate a space without causing offense, I don't talk as a defense mechanism. And I didn't at the time when I first started this know how to navigate that space without causing offense. And I was, have issues with people being upset. So my particular trauma, leads me to quiet myself when I'm, uncertain, which is not true for everyone. So I had kind of that advantage. And the other advantage that I had is that my deconstructing my white supremacy and deconstructing my evangelical faith happened pretty much at the same time. So as I came out of evangelicalism and I learned more about patriarchy, feminism, bodily autonomy, started to deconstruct punitive nature of my faith, the black and white thinking, all of that. I was also doing it alongside these conversations. For example, the first time I ever really started reading about feminism was when I stumbled on a conversation about intersectionality. So the concept of intersectionality was my intro to feminism. And I think doing that gave me the ability to avoid some of the pitfalls that come with white feminism and things like that. So that was a thing. The other thing is, last 7 years I've been kind of learning to reparent myself and look at my own traumas, because you can't have to do that if you have a kid and you don't want to continue those patterns. And so I've been in this headspace for a while in many different areas. And so that helps, I think. But honestly, primarily, I saw these conversations start to happen around race and representation. I saw them start to happen around police brutality and, Black Lives Matter. I saw them start to happen around white feminism and Trump and all of these things. And I just watched and I listened and I paid attention and I saw what the Black women that I followed were going through. And when I did start to speak out, I spoke to white people. I processed offline, and then when I did start to speak out, I spoke to white people and aimed my deconstructive thoughts there. And that's basically it. So when white women whisper and the other ones tell you that the first thing you need to do is they're not kidding. It really is the first step, is just to stand back and watch and learn and listen and process. So